Welcome to our comprehensive guide on administrative tribunals, an essential aspect of administrative law. In this video, we'll explore what administrative tribunals are, their evolution, structure, powers, and the constitutional remedies available against their actions. We'll also compare tribunals with traditional courts and discuss the different types of writs available in India. Whether you're a law student or just curious about how administrative justice works, this video will provide you with a clear and structured understanding. Let's begin by defining what administrative tribunals are and why they matter in the legal system. Administrative tribunals are special agencies created by specific laws to resolve disputes that arise during the implementation of those laws. Unlike regular courts, which have broad jurisdiction, tribunals have specific limited powers. They are not part of the traditional judicial system but perform quasi-judicial functions, meaning they act like courts in some ways but are not courts in the strict sense. Tribunals are established by the state and are given certain judicial powers such as summoning witnesses and receiving evidence. Their main role is to provide a faster, more specialized resolution to disputes, especially in areas like employment, taxation, and industry. Administrative tribunals have several defining characteristics. First, they are established by the executive under statutory provisions. While they must act judicially, their functions are quasi-judicial rather than purely judicial. They operate independently, free from government influence, and possess powers similar to civil courts in certain matters. Importantly, tribunals must follow the principles of natural justice but are not bound by the technical rules of procedure and evidence that apply to regular courts. This flexibility allows them to deliver justice more efficiently. However, they are not considered courts in the traditional sense. Growth of administrative tribunals is a significant development of the 20th century, both in developed and developing countries. In India, tribunals have been set up at both central and state levels to handle disputes in areas like trade, industry, banking, and taxation. The need for tribunals arose due to the backlog and delays in traditional courts, especially for government employees seeking redress for service-related grievances. Tribunals were seen as a way to provide speedy, inexpensive, and effective relief, boosting employee morale and productivity. Establishment of administrative tribunals in India was recommended by the Administrative Reforms Commission and other committees, recognizing the need for specialized bodies to handle service matters. The Supreme Court also supported the idea, emphasizing that public servants should not waste time in lengthy court battles. Legal foundation for tribunals was laid by the 42nd Amendment to the Constitution, specifically Article 323A, which empowered Parliament to create tribunals for service disputes. The Administrative Tribunals Act of 1985 followed, formalizing their structure and powers. Administrative Tribunals Act, 1985, provides for the establishment of one central administrative tribunal and separate state administrative tribunals for each state. There is also provision for joint administrative tribunals for two or more states. The Central Administrative Tribunal, with its principal bench in Delhi and other benches in major cities, was established in November 1985. Over time, more benches were added to cover different regions, ensuring accessibility for government employees across India. State administrative tribunals are set up to handle service cases of state government employees. Joint administrative tribunals can be established for two or more states upon request. For example, states like Orissa, Himachal Pradesh, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu have their own tribunals. In some cases, joint tribunals serve multiple states, such as Arunachal Pradesh sharing a tribunal with the Gauhati bench of the Central Administrative Tribunal. This structure ensures that service disputes are resolved efficiently at the appropriate level. Each administrative tribunal consists of a chairman, vice chairman, and both judicial and administrative members. The number of members is determined by the appropriate government. Each bench typically includes one judicial and one administrative member. The principal bench is located in the capital, with other benches as notified by the government. This composition ensures a balance of legal and administrative expertise, allowing tribunals to handle complex service matters effectively. To be appointed as chairman or vice chairman of a tribunal, a person must be qualified to be a judge of a high court or have served as a secretary to the government of India for at least 2 years. Judicial members must meet similar qualifications, while administrative members should have held senior government positions, such as additional secretary or joint secretary, with adequate administrative experience. These requirements ensure that tribunal members have the necessary expertise and experience. Chairman, vice chairman, and other members of the Central Administrative Tribunal are appointed by the President of India. For state or joint tribunals, appointments are made by the President after consulting the relevant state governors. Importantly, appointments of the chairman, vice chairman, or judicial members require consultation with the Chief Justice of India. If the chairman's position becomes vacant, the vice chairman steps in until a new appointment is made. This process ensures checks and balances in tribunal appointments. Chairman, vice chairman, and other members of a tribunal serve for a term of 5 years or until they reach a specified age. 65 for chairman and vice chairman and 62 for other members, whichever comes first. This fixed term ensures regular rotation and fresh perspectives within the tribunal system. Members can resign by giving written notice, but they continue to serve until their term ends, a successor is appointed, or 3 months have passed since their notice. Tribunal members can only be removed by the President on grounds of proven misbehavior or incapacity, following an inquiry by a Supreme Court judge and after giving the member a chance to be heard. The chairman of the Central Administrative Tribunal is not eligible for further government employment, but vice chairman and members may be appointed to other tribunal positions. These rules are designed to maintain the independence and integrity of tribunal members. Administrative tribunals have jurisdiction, powers, and authority similar to those of high courts in service matters, except for appeals to the Supreme Court under Article 136. They can issue writs and are guided by principles of natural justice rather than strict civil procedure rules. Tribunals can regulate their own procedures, decide when and where to sit, and even punish for contempt, just like high courts. This autonomy helps them function efficiently and effectively. Anyone aggrieved by an order within the tribunal's jurisdiction can apply for redress. Applications must be in the prescribed form with supporting documents and a fee not exceeding 100 rupees. Normally, applicants must exhaust all remedies under service rules before approaching the tribunal. However, if 6 months pass without a decision on their appeal, they can apply directly. Applications must be made within 1 year of the final order or rejection, but late applications may be accepted for sufficient cause. Tribunals decide cases based on documents, writ representations, and sometimes oral arguments. Applicants can appear in person or through a legal practitioner. Tribunal orders are binding on both parties and must be complied with within the time specified or within 6 months if no time is mentioned. If dissatisfied, parties can approach the Supreme Court under Article 136, but this is not an automatic right, it's at the Supreme Court's discretion. Administrative tribunals offer several advantages over traditional courts. They provide appropriate and effective justice, are more flexible in their procedures, and deliver speedy resolutions. Tribunals are also less expensive, making justice more accessible to the common person. Their specialized nature allows them to handle complex service matters efficiently, reducing the burden on regular courts. Despite their benefits, tribunals have limitations. Members may lack a legal background, leading to inconsistent decisions. Tribunals do not always follow uniform precedents, which can result in arbitrary outcomes. Additionally, the absence of strict procedural rules may sometimes compromise fairness. These limitations highlight the need for oversight and possible reforms to ensure justice is consistently delivered. Main distinction between administrative tribunals and courts lies in their approach. Courts follow a strict, uniform procedure and apply the law to facts, acting as controlled fact-finders. Tribunals, on the other hand, have more flexibility and may apply policy considerations. Courts perform only judicial functions, while tribunals may also handle administrative tasks. All courts are tribunals, but not all tribunals are courts. This broader scope allows tribunals to address a wider range of issues. Tribunals develop because court procedures are often technical, time-consuming, and costly. The administrative adjudicatory system was created to support modern government functions like public health, education, and social security. Tribunals offer an informal, flexible, and rapid system of adjudication, making justice more accessible and efficient for the public. Expansion of administrative tribunals in India is linked to the country's economic and social development. As the state took on more responsibilities, the need for specialized bodies to handle disputes grew. Tribunals were established to address the increasing demand for justice in areas like industrialization, social welfare, and economic regulation. They operate independently, free from technical court rules, and are recognized under Articles 32, 136, 226, and 227 of the Constitution. Tribunals face several challenges. Their numbers have grown rapidly, leading to a lack of uniformity. There is no consistent system of appeal, and technical rules of evidence do not apply. Sometimes, tribunal members lack legal qualifications, and in disciplinary proceedings, the roles of prosecutor and judge may be combined, violating natural justice. Decisions may be made without clear reasoning, and official bias can be a problem. These issues highlight the need for better regulation and transparency. There are various types of administrative tribunals in India, each handling specific areas. Examples include industrial tribunals, railway rates tribunals, copyright boards, income tax appellate tribunals, claims tribunals, and election tribunals. Each tribunal is established by a specific statute and has jurisdiction over particular types of disputes. This specialization allows for more effective and knowledgeable decision-making in complex areas. England, administrative law focuses on the actual functioning of government machinery. The Administrative of Justice Miscellaneous Provisions, Act 1938, clarified the principles for issuing prerogative writs but did not fundamentally change the law. Judicial review in England is limited, with courts rarely intervening in administrative actions unless there is a clear legal basis. India, courts play a crucial role in controlling administrative actions. The Constitution guarantees fundamental rights, limiting legislative and executive powers. Judicial review ensures that administrative actions conform to constitutional principles. Indian courts can review administrative actions through public law writs, statutory appeals, and private law remedies like suits for damages or injunction. The scope of review is broader for quasi-judicial actions than for purely administrative decisions. Quasi-judicial orders by administrative authorities can be reviewed on several grounds. These include jurisdictional errors, such as acting without or refusing to exercise jurisdiction, errors of law apparent on the record, and violations of natural justice. If an order is unconstitutional or based on irrelevant material, it can also be challenged. These grounds ensure that tribunals act within their legal limits and respect the rights of individuals. Judicial review of administrative actions can be excluded by legislation. For example, if a statute declares a decision final or bars legal challenges, courts may not review the action. However, there are exceptions. If the tribunal was not properly constituted, abused its power, or acted beyond its jurisdiction, courts can still intervene. This ensures that legislative bars do not override fundamental legal principles. Statutes may expressly bar courts from reviewing tribunal decisions in certain cases. However, if the tribunal was improperly constituted, abused its power, or violated statutory provisions, courts can still review its actions. If a statute providing a finality clause is itself unconstitutional, courts can strike it down. These safeguards protect individuals from arbitrary or unlawful administrative action. In the case of Corporation of Calcutta versus Calcutta Tramways, the court held that a statute with a finality clause that imposes unreasonable restrictions on fundamental rights can be struck down. This case illustrates the judiciary's power to protect constitutional rights, even when statutes attempt to limit judicial review. Public corporation is a hybrid entity, combining features of government departments and business companies. It stands outside the regular framework of central or local government. According to legal scholar Garner, public corporations are instruments for administering enterprises in the public interest, balancing nationalization and private enterprise. They are semi-government, autonomous bodies managing public utilities and services. Statutory public corporations are created by specific laws that define their rights, duties, and obligations. They are wholly owned by the state, have separate legal identities, and can enter contracts or own property in their own name. Public corporations are largely autonomous in finance and management, often exempt from regulations that apply to other public agencies. They are considered state under Article 12 of the Constitution, making them subject to writ jurisdiction. Public corporations typically have a governing body established by statute, consisting of a chairman and members. They are autonomous in finance and management, maintain separate accounts, and publish annual reports. Some act on behalf of the government while others follow ministerial directions. In India, public corporations have constitutional recognition and play a vital role in managing public enterprises. Indian Constitution recognizes public corporations. Article 19(6) allows the state to make laws for state-run or state-controlled corporations to carry on trade, business, industry, or service. This constitutional backing enables the state to establish and regulate public corporations for various economic and social purposes. Public corporations can be classified based on their functions: commercial and financial like LIC, social welfare like SDC, commodity development like ONGC, development work like Damodar Valley Corporation, and controlling agencies like RBI. Each type serves a specific public interest, contributing to the nation's economic and social development. Parliament exercises control over statutory corporations through legislation, laying of rules and regulations, question hours, resolutions, motions, and parliamentary committees. The Committee on Public Undertakings, established in 1964, oversees public corporations. This control ensures that corporations operate in the public interest and maintain accountability. Government controls public corporations by appointing board members, issuing policy directions, participating in management, and conducting inquiries. These measures ensure that corporations align with national policies and serve the best interests of society. Government oversight is crucial for maintaining transparency and efficiency in public enterprises. Statutory corporations are considered state under Article 12 of the Constitution and are subject to writ jurisdiction by the Supreme Court and high courts. This judicial control ensures that corporations act within the law and respect the rights of individuals. Courts can intervene if corporations exceed their powers or violate constitutional principles. Articles 32, 136, 226, and 227 of the Indian Constitution provide strong remedies against administrative actions. Articles 32 and 226 empower the Supreme Court and high courts to issue writs for the enforcement of rights. Article 136 allows the Supreme Court to grant special leave to appeal, while Article 227 gives high courts supervisory powers over all courts and tribunals. These remedies ensure that administrative authorities do not exceed or abuse their powers. Article 226 allows high courts to issue writs, but it is not itself a fundamental right and is discretionary. High courts may refuse relief if other remedies exist. Article 32, on the other hand, is a fundamental right, allowing individuals to approach the Supreme Court directly for enforcement of fundamental rights. The Supreme Court cannot refuse to entertain a petition under Article 32 due to the existence of alternative remedies. Indian Constitution recognizes 5 main types of writs: habeas corpus, mandamus, certiorari, prohibition, and quo warranto. These writs are powerful tools for protecting individual rights and ensuring that administrative authorities act within the law. Each writ serves a specific purpose and can be issued by the Supreme Court or high courts. Habeas corpus is a Latin term meaning to have the body. This writ is used to secure the release of a person unlawfully detained. It can be filed by the detainee or someone on their behalf. Grounds for issuing this writ include illegal detention, malified orders, or procedural defects. However, the writ is not available if the detention is legal or if alternative remedies exist. During emergencies, the right to habeas corpus may be suspended. Mandamus is an order compelling a public authority to perform a public duty. It can be issued against any person holding a public office, corporation, or inferior authority. The petitioner must have a legal right that has been infringed due to non-performance of a mandatory duty. Mandamus is not issued if there is an adequate alternative remedy, if the act is completed, or if the petition is premature. Certiorari is an order issued by a high court to an inferior court or tribunal to transfer the records of a case for review. It is used to quash orders made without jurisdiction, in violation of natural justice, or with errors of law. Only the aggrieved party can apply for this writ. Certiorari is refused if alternative remedies are not exhausted or if the writ would be futile. Writ of prohibition is issued by a superior court to prevent an inferior court or tribunal from proceeding in excess of its jurisdiction or in violation of natural justice. It is preventive, stopping proceedings before a final decision is made. Prohibition can be issued against judicial, quasi-judicial, or statutory bodies with judicial powers. Warranto is a judicial inquiry requiring a person holding a public office to show by what authority they hold that office. If the person lacks a valid title, they can be removed. This writ can be sought by any interested party, not just those directly affected. However, it is discretionary and may be refused in cases of private offices, acquiescence, or where alternative remedies exist. In summary, administrative tribunals play a vital role in delivering specialized, efficient, and accessible justice in India. They complement the traditional court system, offering flexibility and expertise in resolving service and administrative disputes. The Constitution provides robust remedies to ensure that tribunals and public corporations act within their legal limits. Understanding the structure, powers, and limitations of tribunals as well as the types of writs available is essential for anyone interested in administrative law. Thank you for joining us on this journey through administrative tribunals and constitutional remedies.